Is there a past you wish you could rewrite? If it's you, you can do it. You only have 30 seconds.
Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome to the Courteous Review, and today we're going to be talking about Ascend to Zero and see if it's courteous of your time and see if it's courteous of my time as I was testing it out to review it for you all. After roughly 10 hours, I've seen Ascend to Zero through its end. More than anything, Ascend to Zero feels fresh. It's a unique idea, and it's carried a lot of my experience with the game, and basically this idea is that you can stop time, you have 30 seconds to save the world, and there are unique upgrades, and literally thousands of levels to climb through, and honestly, it's just really fun. And what I mean by levels, I don't mean by areas, I mean literal character levels to climb through. At times, you feel like an overpowered anime protagonist absolutely tearing through everything in front of you, and then you hit that first big wall in the third area and realize, alright, maybe it's time for a training arc, maybe it's time to go back to the drawing board and figure out what exactly is working, what's not working. During those 30 seconds, you have a pretty interesting choice. You can run around with the time ticking, or you can stop time completely and reposition without burning any of it. The catch is, nobody can deal damage when time is stopped, including you. So eventually, if you want to actually progress, you have to let that clock start ticking again. And that's where the main loop of the game comes in. Killing bosses gives some of that time back. You're constantly balancing how much time it takes to kill a boss and how much time you want to spend on them versus how much do you want to spend on leveling or moving to a new area to kill the next boss. There are a surprising number of systems layered on top of that, and you can manually aim your attacks, let the game auto-aim for you. You'll find different weapons and gear to equip, and each avatar has its own unique skills that can change how you approach a run as well. The reason why is because these avatars each specialize in a different weapon type. The weapons they specialize in randomly drop from enemies and bosses throughout a run. You can get a bunch of different modifiers, tech chips, and such that is going to influence how much they drop, including luck. There are a ton of different rarities to chase along with different stats, set bonuses, and avatar-specific synergies. Honestly, the loot is probably one of my favorite parts of the game. I love loot. I'm a loot goblin. There's something extremely satisfying about seeing that shiny new rarity hit the ground and immediately wondering if you just found the piece that's going to complete your build or just unlock a whole new tier of your gameplay. But unfortunately, it's not quite that simple. The gear you find during a run isn't always permanent. If you want to keep certain pieces, you have to convert them into permanent equipment in between runs. And that brings us to the hideout. Between runs, this is basically your home base. I'm not sure if it's called the hideout or what they call it in-game, but it's basically the hideout. You can swap avatars, change your equipment, adjust your starting progression, buy permanent upgrades, increase your stats, and unlock even more systems as you go. A lot of these features are tied to rescuing your friends throughout the game. So the more you progress, the more the hideout starts to open up and the more features you get. Basically, keep running, keep rescuing people, and keep unlocking stuff. So what forces you back into this hideout? It's not when your HP hits 0, as most games are. What happens is, when your timer hits 0, it's over. When your HP hits 0, you actually lose a chunk of your time, and time automatically stops, which gives you a chance to recover, reposition, and then keep going. So even if you get absolutely flattened by something, you usually have multiple chances to save the run. Basically, don't give up just because you died once. You will eventually hit a wall. Maybe it's a nasty boss, maybe you die a few too many times early on, and eventually that timer will hit 0. And that's it, that's the run over, and then you're back in the hideout. There you can spend the resources you got, you can start to convert all your items into permanent ones if you have enough, and then you can also use your scoreline. As you're playing, you develop a scoreline based on how many enemies you kill and a bunch of other things that are going on in the background, and then you can grab some permanent upgrades with that scoreline, whether it's a loot box, some coins, or maybe a in-between run modifier. With all that in mind, how does the game actually feel to play? Honestly, really smooth. Everything functions pretty much how you'd expect it to. The boss fights are probably where the game feels the best. They're huge hitboxes, little jukey mini games. The time stop and the amount of stuff flying around the screen can make the fights feel really chaotic and really fun. It definitely hits that bullet hell, bullet heaven itch. The gameplay loop also does a really good job of keeping you moving from run to run. Maybe you're trying to make a specific item permanent, maybe you're chasing a higher rarity drop, or maybe you just want to see if the next run gives you something completely ridiculous to build around. And that was probably one of my favorite parts of the game. Even after 10 hours, more than 10 hours, I still feel like I was putting together new builds. Even if you stick with the same avatar, the upgrades and tech chips you find during a run can push you in completely different directions. At one point, I was running an entirely luck-based build with the drone avatar. Eventually, I unlocked a trait that increased all of my other stats based on a percentage of my luck stat, which then increased my crit, which then increased the amount of items dropped, and then it increased my crit damage, and so on and so forth. It just had this amazing snowball effect. And it's those little moments where a build starts to snowball like that, where it just feels so fun to play, and where those roguelites really pop off. Now, where does the game stop pulling you back in? The biggest issue I felt like was I was playing the same avatars over and over and over because those were the only ones I had good weapons for. I'm not entirely sure if the game gives you more drops for the weapon type your current avatar specializes in, but it definitely felt that way during my playthrough. The result of that was I kept cycling between the same two avatars for probably 8 hours in my 10 to 12 hour first run before I finally had enough gear to feel comfortable branching out. Now, if you don't really care about matching an avatar to their ideal weapon type, this probably won't bother you as much, but if you're someone like me who always wants to run the best gear possible and always chasing like the best in slot and trying to squeeze as much possible out of every single run, it can make experimenting feel more like a punishment and unnecessarily difficult than a reward for like expanding and trying new things. Secondly, there's a point later in the game where one of its fundamental mechanics starts to feel significantly less valuable. It never really caused an issue for me personally, but I did see some discussion about it online, and I'm intentionally not going to explain what that is because I thought discovering it for myself was pretty fun. But just know one of the systems the game initially introduces kind of changes its importance later on in the game. And third, Ascend to Zero eventually becomes a pretty serious route optimization game. You're going to repeat a lot of the same content over and over while figuring out the most efficient way to push farther into a run. The game does let you start in like the later areas, which sounds like an easy solution, but the trade-off is you're skipping all of the tech chips, the loot, and the progression you would have picked up by starting from the beginning. Now, that's not too big of an issue because you can clear the first area in just a few minutes as you start to like one-shot everything in those beginning areas, but it'd be a really easy fix to say, okay, I go into area 2 and I just get a default amount of like upgrades or tech chips I can choose between. So I guess it does reward you for like your knowledge, but I think it'd be really cool if there's like a little bit procedural generation thing going on with where the bosses are located, because the boss locations don't change at all kind of between runs or between areas, but there are some event things that do change, which cells they're in or like the map cells they're in. So I think just kind of expanding on that would be a good fix. Now, starting later can also be useful once you're deep into the game and you're hunting for something specific. Like for me at this point, I could start in area 3 and probably clear most of it and be comfortable with that. I wouldn't have like a great run by any means, but I could go unlock a gear for like future runs. So if repeatedly optimizing the same route sounds satisfying to you, there's a lot to dig into here. If repetition tends to wear you down quickly, this is probably where Ascend to Zero is going to start testing you and making you question whether the game's for you or not. However, it is kind of the whole premise is you have 30 seconds to save the world, and if you went back 30 seconds in real life, you'd be in the same spot every single time, right? So it's kind of going with that whole premise. All those issues are pretty subjective though, and I think Ascend to Zero is a bit of a hidden gem still. And a big reason I'm optimistic about it is the roadmap the developers have already laid out for the future. They're talking about having a better late game experience. They're talking about more ways to build your avatars, additional run customization, new gadgets, more in-game content, and even another avatar. Honestly, my biggest overall complaint that I didn't mention is that the game just ends too soon. I played for around 12 hours before I beat the game, and with those additions, I could easily see myself coming back and putting another 10 to 20 hours into it. In fact, when I beat the game, I still played quite a bit after, and I still plan on playing even after I'm done making this video. I'd especially love to see more reasons to approach the game differently, maybe incentives to play certain avatars other than you get a 5% boost this run or something like that. Complete specific content would be useful, or even dedicated challenge modes. And based on what they've talked about, it sounds like some of that may be possible. Now, what's the price of this game? Ascend to Zero is $12. I got it on sale for $11 when it first came out. I think it was $11 or $10.99. And so $12 is an absolute steal for the experience I got out of it. Even if you only spend 6 to 10 hours playing and you never touch it again, I mean, you're talking like $1, maybe $2 an hour of entertainment. And let me tell you, I just went to AMC with my family and it cost me $15 for some popcorn, which is absolutely crazy. And so if I'm going to spend $15, well, why not just spend 12 and go play Ascend to Zero? Now, who is this game for? Well, if you're still watching at this point, it's probably you. If you like roguelites, bullet heavens, bullet hells, chasing loot, experimenting with builds, or just watching numbers progressively get more ridiculous, Ascend to Zero is probably going to be a hit for you. Especially if you're the kind of player who doesn't mind repeating some content as long as each run gives you something new to chase or another way to optimize what you're doing. Now, the question is Ascend to Zero worth your time? The Courteous Verdict, is absolutely. If this game is like in the genre that you like, it's absolutely worth your time. Now, if it isn't normally in your genre, for $12, I think it's a really fun introduction into this style of genre with a genuinely unique time-stopping twist that helps it stand out from everything else. Ascend to Zero was absolutely courteous of my time, and I plan to keep hopping in and trying out different builds, and stay tuned for the upcoming updates. Now, if you guys enjoyed the video, please leave me a like. I'd appreciate any comments on what you'd like to see differently, what type of games you'd like to see in the future. I'm kind of getting back into this whole YouTube thing, and I appreciate all of you guys for watching. You've been courteous of my time, I'll be courteous of yours. Have a great rest of your day.